Members of the jury, Charles Jones was a prominent drill rapper out of Jacksonville, Florida. He was known as Julio Foolio, Six, the Big Rapper. He had drill raps on Instagram, on YouTube. He had millions of hits and followers. He was well known in Jacksonville. They hunted him, they stalked him, they found him, they targeted him, and they gunned him down. That is the only reason all 5 of those individuals were here in Tampa, Florida on June 22nd, and then the early morning hours of June 23rd of 2024. The defendant, Alicia Andrews, seated over there, along with her fellow co-defendants, her fellow co-conspirators, Rashad Murphy, Davian Murphy, Sean Gathright, and her boyfriend, Isaiah Chance. That is the only reason they came down to Tampa, was for that one specific purpose, to hunt and gun down Charles Jones. This was a rival gang war that has been going on in Jacksonville for years and years. You have seen those drill rap videos. You have seen the type of videos that they are. And Charles Jones came down to Tampa to celebrate his birthday with friends. Charles Jones had posted online drill rap videos disrespecting the other side, disrespecting ATK, disrespecting members of 1200. And the other side did the same thing. You saw those videos from Young and Ace, and the ones produced from ATK, and the ones produced by 1200. Both sides made fun of other members that have been gunned down in this horrific gang war that has been going on in Jacksonville for years. And one of the songs that Charles Jones made was When I See You, specifically making fun of the town center shooting where Young and Ace was shot and his little brother killed, and 2 other members of their group were killed, including someone who went by the name of 23, who was close to Isaiah Chance, the defendant's boyfriend of over 3 years. They had had intimate conversations about this rival gang war that had occurred.
Overruled.
They had had, the evidence shows, her messaging on her phone shows that she had had conversations with Charles Jones where she had been told by him about these deaths. They discussed the town center and how he could not go there anymore because what had happened at the town center. That is where 23 was killed. That is where Young and Ace was shot multiple times. There had been conversations on October 8th between her and her boyfriend, Charles Jones. You know what happened on October 7th. Charles Jones was shot. There was an attempt on his life in Jacksonville. And you have seen ballistic evidence in this case that ties the people in this murder and this conspiracy directly to the attempt on his life in October of 2023. Sean Gathright, who is the arms person, who is the arms supply person, who supplies the weapons, who has the weapons and takes them away and transports them in the Chevy Impala and then transports them in the Toyota 4Runner and then eventually to his house. When he gets stopped in that Toyota 4Runner, there are rifle shell casings that are tested and compared to the shell casings that are collected from the October 2023 attempted murder, aggravated battery of Charles Jones that happens in Jacksonville, Florida. And it is the same gun that fires those shell casings, the one that are found in Sean Gathright's vehicle and the ones that are found at the attempted murder scene of Charles Jones in October in 2023. They tried to kill him before and were not successful. And you heard that Charles Jones got on the internet and posted a video on the internet and taunted them after it happened, saying that they didn't get him. They planned to murder him, and this time they were not going to miss. This is a well-orchestrated, planned, first-degree, premeditated murder. State's Exhibit 22. This is at the Home to Suites, and we put many clips together, but this is Charles Jones, and this is his black Dodge Charger parked in front of the Home to Suites, and his girlfriend is behind him in her car. And you can clearly see that he is seated in the front passenger seat of that Dodge Charger. In the second clip, you're going to see at this location, this is the first time that black Chevy Impala carrying 3 armed and covered gunmen pull into that parking lot, and they don't go in front of where Charles Jones' vehicle is. You see them turn to the right. They are avoiding the line of sight of Charles Jones. They want to make sure that they get him. They never pull into the line of sight of Charles Jones and his party. Charles Jones now is laying in that front passenger seat with his feet up. The next clip that you see in State's Exhibit 22 is of the car pulling up of his friend. That's Typha McCrae, and in his vehicle, the black Chevy Impala has already pulled in. It is now circling the parking lot so it can stay out of view. The next clip you're going to see is Typha McCrae and
For you, prosecutors call it a gang hit. The defense says she's innocent. Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas breaks down the case against Alicia Andrews in the murder of Julio Foolio. Watch the latest episode of On the Record Now at CourtTV.com under the Shows tab or on YouTube at Court TV. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more right after the break.
Back to Tampa, Florida now for more testimony in the murder of Julio Foolio trial.
Alicia Andrews is the first of 5 co-defendants to stand trial for the shooting death of the rising rapper whose real name is Charles Jones.
Prosecutors say she traveled with her boyfriend to Tampa and helped track down Jones before he was shot and killed in an ambush attack.
All right, let's head back into court now for more of the prosecution's closing argument. And a quick reminder, the court has ordered that we can't broadcast certain names. So if you hear the audio drop out, it's because we're muting those names.
passenger seat. The next sequence is the silver Chevy Cruze. We all know who is in the silver Chevy Cruze. It is the defendant along with her good boyfriend, Isaiah Chance. They circle, they don't go to the right, they directly go by the cars of the victim and the victim's party. These are cars that they are very well familiar at this point because they have seen these cars at 2 other locations. They saw it first at Teasers and they saw it at Truth 18. It is not a coincidence that the silver Chevy Cruze followed them to this location and then pulls off into another parking lot while it waits for that black Chevy Impala with the 3 armed and masked gunmen to get there. They are waiting for the gunmen to get there. And when the black Chevy Impala gets there, they come and they directly look for the victim and the victim's vehicles. Again, State's Exhibit 22, you're going to see that silver Chevy Impala with the defendant and her boyfriend circle around, and they are going to the exact area where the black Chevy Impala is. The second clip, after they have gone to where that black Chevy Impala is and the black Chevy Impala has parked, they then are now leaving, and they again are going for a direct line of sight where the victim and his friends are parked and sitting in their cars. State's Exhibit 22, you're going to see at this very moment, they can see where the victim is. That silver Chevy Cruze is passing where the victim is seated in that passenger seat. They are the eyes. They are the surveillance tracking team of this mission. And make no mistake, this is a mission. The assault hit team is the black Chevy Impala with 3 armed and masked men. 2 of the men are having assault rifles. Their faces are covered. One of them has all black. The other has a white ski mask. And then the third shooter has a Glock with a switch that makes it a fully automatic gun and a weapon. You're going to see in this next clip that the first person to fire is the person with the firearm. And it's very clear what person they are shooting at, what person they are targeting. They are targeting the victim, who is the passenger in the black Chevy Impala. They don't care about any of those other cars that flee and crash. In this next clip, you're going to see that they are specifically targeting the victim. They follow his car. They continue to fire upon his car. That is the only car that they are interested in, because the person who has taunted them, the person who they unsuccessfully tried to kill months ago, survived. And now they are going to ensure that he dies. State's Exhibit 22. They are heavily armed. They are prepared. They are masked. They brought artillery with them. They are ready to kill Charles Jones. They didn't just kill Charles Jones. When they came to Tampa and they shot up that parking lot, there were many victims. There were 2 people that were in that car with Charles Jones. Xavier Edwards was shot. You see his injuries in this photograph. Gino Norris was shot. They didn't care who they hurt. They just wanted to kill Charles Jones. They weren't the only victims in this case. They shot up a public parking lot in a hotel that had guests, that had families, that had people that were dropping off their children at University of South Florida, that is just across the street from Fowler Avenue, the other road that intersects McKinley where those hotels are. They shot up hotel rooms that had families in it, husband and wives and children. They didn't care who they hurt. Their focus was on Charles Jones, and they wanted to make sure that they killed him. In order to prove murder in the first degree, the judge just read to you what those instructions are. This is what the state has to prove, that Charles Jones is dead. That element, we only have to prove 3 elements beyond and to the exclusion of reasonable doubt. Charles Jones is dead. That has been proved beyond a reasonable doubt. The death was caused by the criminal act of Alicia Andrews. That has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. There is a mountain of evidence, and we're going to talk about the principal instruction, because she is a principal to this crime, and you treat her as if she had done everything her fellow co-defendants did. You put her in exactly the same shoes. She is criminally responsible for everything that her fellow co-defendants did in this particular case, and that there was a premeditated killing of Charles Jones. An act includes a series or related actions arising from and performed pursuant to a single design or purpose. Killing with premeditation is a killing after consciously deciding to do so. The decision must be present in the mind at the time of the killing. The law does not fix the exact period of time that must pass between the formation of the premeditated intent to kill and the killing. The period of time must be long enough to allow reflection by the defendant. The premeditated intent to kill must be formed before the killing. Premeditation can happen in seconds. There is no fixed time. There just has to be a conscious reflection by the defendant, where they reflect upon it and form that.
Still with us, criminal defense attorney Joanna Nuevas. Joanna, let me ask you this. So I feel like the prosecution is addressing closing very similarly to opening. It was done by somebody different, but it was showing the entire video. And I remember thinking, oh boy, we can't follow it. Well, now they're breaking it down, but is it compelling? Do you think that it's convincing this jury, yes, there's enough evidence to convict her of murder?
I really think that we're going to end up with a hung jury here. That's my prediction, that I think you're going to have some of those people that operate with that common sense factor, like, oh, okay, she was with this guy for years, she hopped in the car, she drove all the way down there, and you really want us to believe you didn't know anything about it. But common sense isn't the burden of proof. It's the prosecution's job to show each and every element beyond a reasonable doubt. And I do think that they're going to struggle with showing what we were discussing about the meeting of the minds and the actions that she actually took to participate.
Yeah, I would agree. And similarly, I'm having the same reaction that I had to the opening statement, is that we're hearing a lot about these other guys, not a lot about her. They try to say she was the one that was going to rent out the Airbnb. That didn't quite pan out. She made a call, but it was somebody else who got the Airbnb. We know about the call situation. You know, when you start digging into it, I think it's still sort of this flimsy sort of connection between the two. And I wonder what you think, Joanna, about the charging decision. One of the things that the defense is going to argue is that this was an overzealous detective. He was only on the job for 4 months, and he just saw this little thing dangling there, this young lady. He didn't like her answers to the questions and decided to pass it on so that prosecutors could look at it and possibly charge her, and they did.
Yeah, I could see where that could happen too, right? When you see her demeanor on the stand, and she has kind of a very hard disposition. Like, she may not have been as cooperative as they wanted her to be and weren't giving them the answers that they were looking for. And so you can see that where the targeting may have happened here, that, okay, well, we're going to make her a bigger part of this than she may actually have been. So I could definitely align with that kind of analysis.
Yeah.
And Judge, I want to just point out, I mean, it's kind of the elephant in the room. Let's not discount the fact of what she looks like. The defense has made a tremendous effort to make her look a certain way. She comes across very well, you know, certainly doesn't look the part.
No,
and
she doesn't look like a gang
that's
member.
important.
That is important, and I think they prepped her, to your point, very, very, very well for her testimony. All right, stay tuned. We need to take a break. When we come back, we'll have more of the state's closing argument in the murder trial of Alicia Andrews. That's next.
I'm going to ask you a lot of intensely personal questions.
How do you explain it? The worst crime anyone can imagine.
Do you feel like you took the fall for this murder?
Tell me in your own words, what happened?
Let's get started.
Interview with a Killer. New episode Saturdays at 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
All right, let's head back to Florida now for day 8 of the murder trial of Julio Foolio, and that's again for Alicia Andrews.
Prosecutors say that Andrews helped her boyfriend, Isaiah Chance, and 4 others track down and kill the rapper, whose real name is Charles Jones.
Again, investigators say that the shooting stemmed from an ongoing gang war. Andrews is the first of 5 co-defendants to be tried for Jones's death.
Let's go back in now for more of the prosecution's closing argument.
We are well beyond that in this case. This is a planned first-degree murder. Before they even got into that black Chevy Impala, they had planned to do this. They had got weapons together. They knew what sort of equipment they wanted. Not only did they have the type of weapons that fire rapidly, they intended to get away with this murder. They got brass catchers. They put those on the AR rifles, and none of the brass, none of the spent shell casings were left behind because they were collected. That is sophistication. That are people that planned to commit this crime and planned to get away with it. The question of premeditation is a question of fact to be determined by you as jurors. From the evidence, it will be sufficient proof of premeditation if the circumstances of the killing and the conduct of the accused convince you beyond a reasonable doubt of the existence of premeditation at the time of the killing. The proof in this case is overwhelming, and you can see it yourself. Those videos are evidence. It is direct evidence. It is captured on video for all of you to see it. You saw what happened. You saw that they tracked and they stalked and they hunted that victim down in Florida, here in Tampa. He posted where he was going to be on his Instagram. She follows his Instagram. She doesn't like him. It's clear from her messages that she does not like Charles Jones. Why in the world would she need to follow him? She follows his Instagram. And on Instagram, well before he came to Florida, over 7 days before he came, he is posting that he is going to be at Teasers on June 22nd between 8 and 3 a.m. He also posts that he is going to be at Teasers on June 22nd. He is posting exactly where he is going to be. That is the reason why they are coming to Tampa on June 22nd of 2024. That is the only reason that they are coming to Tampa. She books that Airbnb. She does it on June 21st of 2024. She is trying to book the Airbnb. She's not the actual one that books it because the co-defendant, Rashad Murphy, ends up doing it. This falls through. But it is clear that she is in the loop. It is clear that she is participating. She is the first one that tries to book the Airbnb in Tampa. It's very clear. This happens on June 21st of 2024. We had Detective Ramos say to you exactly where she was when she did that. The judge read to you the date of the crime, and for count 2, for the conspiracy count, The dates that we have to prove are between June 21st and June 23rd of 2024. And there are several locations that are involved in the conspiracy, but the first one is where she is located when she sends this. And she is not with the defendant, Isaiah Chance. Isaiah Chance is miles away on his own device, nowhere near her, when she herself is trying to book all of them an Airbnb. And there is a reason why they have her booking the Airbnb. There is a reason why, when she doesn't get the Airbnb, that Rashad Murphy uses the shared phone that he does of his girlfriend, Charmaine Steiger. Because when Julio Foolio, when Charles Jones gets killed, who do you think the primary suspects are going to be? It is going to be the high-profile rival gangs that are feuding with him online. So Isaiah Chance can't book the Airbnb with his phone. So Rashad Murphy doesn't use a phone. He's known as Ghost. He uses the shared phone of Charmaine Steiger, because they know when law enforcement officers come looking and they know who's certified in a gang, that the first thing that they are going to look for is the usual suspects in this rival gang war. So Charles Jones isn't going to use his own phone. He's going to use the cover of his girlfriend. Just like Rashad Murphy isn't going to use his own phone, he's going to use Charmaine Steiger's phone. This is what they do because they want to ensure after this happens that they don't get caught. They also get rid of all of their phones because they don't want any sort of evidence to be linked and tracked back to them. So she says on June 21st of 2024 that she wants to book an Airbnb. She wants more than one bedroom, like two. And that doesn't fall through, or that falls through. And so Rashad Murphy on his phone, this is the phone that is confiscated in Rashad Murphy's possession when he flees from law enforcement in that silver Chevy Cruze, when he is found later by the Gwinnett County Police Department when they have put out an alert for that vehicle. And so he is the one on his phone, the extraction from his phone. There is the actual booking of the Airbnb that they end up using. And it is no mistake, it is no coincidence that this Airbnb on Gazebo Pond Lane is within miles, just a couple of miles.
Joanna Nuevas, thank you so much for being with us today.
Folks, stick around. Coming up, more of the state's closing argument in the murder of Julio Foolio trial. You're watching Court TV, your front row seat to justice. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. We begin this hour in Florida, where closing arguments are underway in the murder of Julio Foolio trial. Alicia Andrews is the first of 5 defendants to be tried for the shooting death of aspiring rapper whose real name is Charles Jones. Well, today, Andrews took the stand on her own behalf and testified that she didn't know Julio Foolio was going to be killed and she didn't have anything to do with the murder. She told the jury she was simply on a trip to Tampa with her boyfriend. At least that's what she thought. His name's Isaiah Chance. Now, he is one of the co-defendants in the case as well. And she also testified about the alleged physical abuse that she did suffer at his hands. All right, let's head back into court now for more of the state's closing argument.
Is shot and killed. It is in no coincidence that that Airbnb is only within a couple miles of the 2 very clubs that he is going to be performing at or going to be at in Tampa, at Teasers and at Truth 18. And so the other location for count 2 of the indictment that we have to prove is that it was within a 10-mile radius of both Truth 18 and of teasers. And those addresses are both in here listed as well. 4819 East Bush Boulevard, as well as 9700 North Nebraska area. I'm sorry, North Nebraska Avenue. Both of those locations are within Hillsborough County. The other address as part of this conspiracy is the Airbnb itself, that they were within a 3-mile radius of 3703 Gazebo Pond Lane, Tampa, Florida, County of Hillsborough. And the last and final address of that conspiracy is 11606 McKinley Drive, which is the address of the Home to Suites, as well as the address of Rashad Murphy, that phone when this Airbnb is booked. And that is another Jacksonville address that you will see on this date of the crime, where it says, sorry, I'm going to go to the address, 301 Caravan Circle, Jacksonville County, also state of Florida. And the final one is the house of Sean Gathright, 13751 Victoria Lakes Drive, Circle, Jacksonville County, Jacksonville, Florida, also County of Duval. Those are all the addresses of where acts that occurred in this conspiracy. And that is what we have to prove, and that is what we have proven. That is why Detective Ramos testified to exactly where this device was when they sent out this request to book the Airbnb and had it confirmed. And he had to send his driver's license in order to secure and book that Airbnb. You have seen the search warrant that was executed on SeanGathright's house afterwards. And these firearms, there were 2 assault rifles that were taken. And they were collected and they were sent to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement for testing. You saw the brass catchers, evidence in this case. All of this leads back to this first-degree premeditated murder and conspiracy to kill Charles Jones. What you saw in the video, the type of firearms that were used in this case, 2 of the shooters had assault rifles that had brass catchers on it, and they lead directly back to Sean Gathright. His path was followed. We know where he went in the black Chevy Impala after leaving that Airbnb. There is video evidence of all 4 defendants, Davion Murphy, Isaiah Chance, Sean Gathright, and Alicia Andrews all were at that Tampa Airbnb. The only one who wasn't was Rashad Murphy. But because he took an Uber, we know he was at that Tampa Airbnb as well, because we see the Uber dropping them all off at Sean Gathright's house. And you heard the testimony from the Uber driver, and he testified that the 3 people that he picked up at that Airbnb are the exact same 3 people that he dropped off. And then after we see Sean Gathright leave, he's the one that takes the Chevy Impala to his grandmother's house in Auburndale. And then he switches vehicles because, again, he does not want to be caught driving the vehicle that contained the 3 shooters who gunned down Charles Jones in Jacksonville, Florida. So he switches vehicles. He leaves that vehicle at grandma's house. And what does he do? He wipes down the entire car. He is getting rid of fingerprints. He wants to make it look like none of his friends were in that vehicle. They are very smart. They are very sophisticated. Those 2 shell casings, they are not from rifles. They were not fired by the guns that had those brass catchers on it. What those are 9mm shell casings. The only brass, the only casings that were left here at this homicide was 9mm. That firearm that had the switch that made it fully automatic, the one that you saw in State's Exhibit 22, the first gunman to fire directly at the windshield of the victim's vehicle was a firearm. It was a 9mm, and it unloaded 31 shell casings onto the ground at that homicide scene where Charles Jones was murdered. And all of those shell casings were recovered. And you heard how 30 of them, they tried to get DNA off of them, were packaged specially and sent off to ATF. One of them was kept for Tampa Police Department to submit for analysis and comparison. And they did. They compared it to these two spent shell casings in the safe of Sean Gathwright's house, and they are a ballistic match. You heard from Amara Drew. She testified that she compared both of those shell casings to the one that was found at the murder scene and retained by Tampa Police Department for testing. And the same firearm that fired those two shell casings that were ejected out of the 9mm are a match and ballistically identified to the same gun that was shot that you saw on that video, State's Exhibit 22, firing into the windshield of Charles Jones's car. You also heard about the spent shell casings that were recovered from Jacksonville from the Toyota 4Runner of Sean Gathwright. Remember all of those shell casings that were collected. State's Exhibit 50 and State's Exhibit 49A through I. Both of those shell casings were collected and submitted to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Some were from the Toyota 4Runner in that box. Do you remember the photograph of the box? And then they went and they retained from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office the shell casings that were recovered from the October 7th, 2023 attempted murder of Charles Jones. And they compared those shell casings. And those shell casings, again, analyzed by Amara Drew, and they were matched, ballistically matched to the same firearm. They both were shot by the same assault rifle. The other part of the ballistic evidence that you heard about were the fragments that were recovered from the medical examiner's office. And they were sent to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to be compared against the two rifles, the two assault rifles that were collected in this case from that safe in Sean Gathwright's house. And what Amara Drew could tell you is from that fragment that one of them was found that it did not shoot that projectile. So one of them did. The other one was inconclusive, and that meant there wasn't enough detail on that projectile, that fragment that was found in the victim's body to say that it was or to say that it wasn't. So those two assault rifles absolutely can be the assault rifles that were used in this case. They match the appearance. They have the brass catchers on them that we saw was used in this crime. And because we don't have any spent casings, which again is part of their plan to make it difficult to link the firearms to this case, we cannot compare brass casings because there were none left at the scene. But there is definitely evidence in that scene in Sean Gathwright's house that are connected, and those are those 9mm that were found in that safe along with those two AR rifles. That is why you heard from Amara Drew, and that is why all of that evidence was brought down from Jacksonville, because it ties these defendants to the homicide here in Tampa and the attempted homicide of the victim in 2023. These were all of the type of ammunition that was consistent and capable of being fired in those assault rifles, also found in Sean Gathrights' home. And when we talk about planning and conspiracy, what we're talking about, we have the video evidence to prove and show all of it, just how well coordinated. Not only was it planned ahead of time, not only did they talk about it ahead of time, there was coordination each and every time. This was a mission to kill Charles Jones, and there was an assault hit team, and there was a surveillance team that the defendant was a part of. And again, when we talk about using her for cover, she was a part of it. She was an active participant. She's not just sitting in the car. She has a role to play. Her play is that she is going to give Isaiah Chance cover. They know who Isaiah Chance is. You heard from Robert Howard there. If he would have saw or recognized Isaiah Chance alone in the parking lot in Tampa in the same vicinity of his friend Charles Jones, they absolutely would have known that they were in danger. He wants to blend. That's what she is. She's covered. That's what they do. They use their girlfriends, and she is an active, willing participant, and she has protected him in that interview with law enforcement and on that stand today, and she continues to protect him. And the judge will read to you an instruction, and she will let you know that once the defendant takes the stand, you treat her like any other witness in this case, and you determine whether or not she is credible. You determine whether or not she is lying on that stand when she tells you that she had no idea of what was going on. Common sense does not leave this courtroom. There is no way that a plan this well executed, this well planned, that those killers would have brought in someone who had no idea of what was going on. She is a trusted confidant of her boyfriend, Isaiah Chance. You heard those messages. You know not only is she a trusted confidant and that she knows all of the details of the gang war, that she has been personally affected by this. And there is no love lost for Julio Foolio. Her boyfriend that she loves and that she is willing to lie for and ignore what her attorneys are telling her to do and still call him and talk to him 5 times a day, sometimes more, about this case, it is because she is still in a relationship. She is doing that knowing that every single one of those jail phone calls are recorded.
Compelling argument made there by the state connecting Alicia Andrews to these murders. All right, we're going to pause it right there. When we come back, the prosecutors continue with their final plea to the jury for a guilty verdict in the case. And also, Sean Diddy Combs now has a new home to serve out his time on prostitution-related charges. We'll tell you about that. So keep it here on your front row seat to justice.
6-year-old shot his teacher.
Their side battling that it is part of the job. Just outrageous.
The first grader shoots teacher civil trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, Samantha Booth cared for a little girl for 2 years. Now she's charged with killing the girl's grandfather. We're diving deeper into this shocking case.
Closing Arguments tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Before we head back to court, here are a few other cases that Court TV is tracking. Sean Diddy Combs has been transferred to a federal prison at Fort Dix, New Jersey, where he will likely spend the rest of his sentence. The transfer to the low-security facility was requested by his lawyers so that he could be closer to his family. His projected release date is May 8th of 2028. In Massachusetts, a judge grants Brian Walsh's lawyer's request to preserve the sealed evidence from the federal probe into the Karen Reed investigation. The documents were scheduled to be destroyed today. It is the latest development in the ongoing battle involving several Norfolk County defendants. Their push to access evidence involving embattled investigator Michael Proctor. Walsh is accused of killing his wife Anna, who disappeared on New Year's Day in 2023. And in California, law enforcement executed search warrants at Ashley Buzzard's home, a storage locker, and rental car. Investigators say earlier this month, Ashley traveled out of California with her 9-year-old daughter, Melody, but then returned without the little girl. Officials say her mother hasn't been cooperating, but has yet to charge or to be charged in Melody's disappearance. All right, let's head back to Florida now for more of the state's closing argument in the murder trial of Julio Foolio.
That is how much she is willing to protect him. You see this chart. They went and they stalked that victim at more than one location. And you heard from Detective Ramos, and you heard from their own experts, Thomas Pullen, that all of the phones belonging to Isaiah Chance and Sean Gathright, that they were tracked, I'm sorry, not Isaiah Chance, Davian Murphy and Sean Gathright, that they were tracked to teasers earlier that day, before the victim was there, that they were going up and down Hillsborough. You know what that is? They're casing it. They want to know where is a good opportunity to shoot and kill the victim. That is why they are there before. The phone evidence in this case is overwhelming. That with the video evidence, you got to see with your own eyes exactly what happened in this case. And at this first location off of North Nebraska, you can see exactly by this diagram where everyone went. Those 4 cars represent the victim's vehicles. And the blue represents Isaiah Chance and the defendant. And they are the surveillance stalking team. The black Chevy Impala, it never gets to the scene first in any 3 of those locations. Teasers, Truth 18, and Home to Sweets. And they only ever go in the parking lot. This isn't a reconciliation. This isn't a romantic getaway. This isn't a time for the 2 of them to get back together. There is one purpose, and that is to find Charles Jones. They never go inside. They never talk to a bouncer. Their one job is to see when Charles Jones gets there. They walk in the parking lot. This is June in Florida, in Tampa, Florida. It is hot out. Isaiah Chance, who cares about his appearance, who wants to know what his outfit looks like, who gets into a war of words with Charles Jones online because he's accused of wearing fake designer clothes, is not going clubbing in a gray hoodie with the hoodie pulled up and a COVID mask on his face. And neither is the defendant. She's not going in some kind of track pants and a blue jean jacket clubbing in Tampa if that is their true purpose. They are wearing COVID masks so that their faces are covered, and they are appearing as a couple so that Charles Jones and his friends don't have any sort of alert or warning that the other gang is here. And the people in the black Chevy Impala never get out because they absolutely know who Rashad and Davian Murphy are. They never get out until they are ready and they know that Charles Jones are in their sights. And it is only after the silver Chevy Cruze gets there and park. And that club is packed. They have to leave. They have to circle around the parking lot because that parking lot is packed. It doesn't matter that her boyfriend doesn't like a packed club. If that were the case, they would have never even pulled in. They are there for one purpose, and that is to get eyes on the victim. And the video shows it. There is no doubt that is what happens. She is walking.
All right, I want to bring in our guest for this hour. Joining us to discuss is former federal prosecutor and president of West Coast Trial Lawyers, Nima Rahmani. Nima, great to see you. As always, thank you so much for joining me on the program. And I got to say, the prosecutor, I thought, started slow because I'm like, okay, where's the defendant's name? She's talking about all these other co-defendants, but she's starting to pick up steam. And her arguments are making sense, at least in terms of the fact that there was this coordinated attack, and there's video evidence showing this coordination, and she was sort of posing as a lookout. It all kind of comes together. So I want to ask you, what say you about the arguments that they're making? I think there are some little missing pieces, but it is a compelling argument.
I agree with you, Michael. Always great being on with you. And like you said, it is not an easy case. I'm as pro-prosecution as they come, and I believe that Andrews absolutely was part of this conspiracy and knew what she was doing. I don't buy her testimony at all, but you got to get 12 out of 12 jurors, and it is a challenging case. I think the good evidence the prosecution have is traveling from Jacksonville to Tampa, right? That Airbnb nearby, the masks, the cell phone, cell site usage, although Andrews blames it on Chance, her boyfriend at the time. I really like the lies to law enforcement, denying that she even knows the co-defendants. But the reality, Michael, is, women do have it tough in this country. Sometimes they're paid less, but in the courtroom, they tend to do a lot better than men. And in this particular case, blaming your boyfriend and saying that you're the victim of abuse is a good defense in this case. I'm not saying it's going to carry the day, but I wouldn't be surprised if the prosecution can't get 12 out of 12, given the state of the evidence and the fact that there is somewhat of a ready-made defense here.
I would agree, and I think the case had some issues from the beginning, but this defendant decided to take the stand and tell her story. And you said it a moment ago, you don't believe her, right? And by taking the stand, it really becomes about whether you believe her or not. And some of the things that she said really didn't make a lot of sense. So I think it might have been a mistake. What do you think?
Well, when a criminal defendant takes the stand, the entire case comes down to his or her testimony. You could throw everything else out the window. The jurors that might have been nodding off, not paying attention, to other witnesses, they're going to be leaned in, and they're going to want to know exactly what she said. And look, this is a very different Andrews than the red hair that we saw earlier. She's cleaned up very nice. She did give a somewhat sympathetic story. Again, I wasn't buying it, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of the jurors did, that said, listen, this is someone that just was along for the ride. She was scared of her boyfriend, and that's why she did what she did. Of all the 5 co-defendants, her case, in my opinion, is the most challenging. Obviously, the other ones are facing the death penalty. She is not. But if I were the prosecution here, we'll see what happens at the end. Maybe, just maybe, this is the type of defendant that you really want to cut a deal with. She wasn't a part of the gang. I think everyone acknowledges that. Obviously, she didn't pull the trigger, and hopefully the prosecution gets the guilty verdict here, but it's not going to be easy, Michael.
Yeah, sometimes you see defendants like Alicia Andrews being charged for the sole purpose of maybe hoping that they'll turn on the others and make life easy for prosecutors. Didn't work out that way in this case. All right, Nima, stand by. It's time for us to take a break. Folks, keep it here on Court TV Live for more of the state's closing argument in the Murder of Julio Foolio trial. That'll be next, right here on Court TV.
That's when he bruised my eye.
Who is he?
Isaiah.
Do you remember when this was, time frame?
I don't remember the exact date, but I recall sending her a picture, though.
Who is her?
I think that's...
All right. Now, why did you send this picture?
Because I was already telling her about the other incidents, so when I sent it to her, I'm like I'm fed up, kind of like just telling her, like, what do I do?
All right.
back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. The jury will soon have the case in the murder of Julio Foolio trial in Florida. Closing arguments still underway, and today, defendant Alicia Andrews took the stand in her own defense, trying to convince the jury that she had nothing to do with the shooting death of the aspiring rapper whose real name is Charles Jones. He was gunned down in a hotel parking lot on the campus of the University of South Florida back in June of 2024. Just 2 days after his 26th birthday. The state is continuing its closing argument, so let's head back to court.
Foot away from him at all times when he is talking on their phone. It goes beyond belief that she didn't hear every single word that he said. And she is not shocked. She is not trying to walk away from him. And she certainly is not surprised because she knew it. All of the conversations about the conspiracy, they happened well before the date that we charged for that conspiracy. And you know it did. You know with your common sense that this was talked about at many locations, at many times, and many different places that we have never alleged and we will never be able to bring to you. Because
overruled, go ahead.
The defendant will never admit what she did. She won't admit it to Detective Ramos and the detectives of the Tampa Police Department, and she's certainly not going to admit it to you, because that would mean that she is confessing to conspire in a first-degree premeditated murder. But you know that those conversations happened because of what you saw on the video. She is not surprised. She is playing her role. She is playing her part. You saw those messages between her phone and Sean Gathright. Pick up the effing phone now. Pick up the to you that there wasn't an actual phone call that occurred after that second text message is preposterous. And she is seated next to him in that silver Chevy Cruze. And to suggest to all of you that you don't know exactly the type of conversation that happened in that car that she absolutely heard and knew about because she is a part of it. Your common sense tells you that. This was well planned, well executed, and they would not have brought along a girlfriend unless she served a purpose. And she did. She was their cover. And you know from the stand, she admitted what had happened on October 8th, that phone call. She had to admit it. She didn't want to admit it, just like when law enforcement officers were questioning her. When I was questioning her, she in her memory, she knows the conversation she's had with with Isaiah Chance. She knows their conversations. She knows what happened when his best friend, one of his good friends, was shot and killed on October 6th and 7th of 2023. And how upset he was. There are messages between the two of them where he is telling her how out of his mind he is with grief. And you heard her say, yeah, I had to stay away. I had to stay away. And then he's telling her to be loyal, to stay loyal. And then she is responding, don't worry, I'm straight. I will delete those messages. She is his intimate confidant. They have talked about this. And what exactly do you think that she needs to delete? What conversation could she possibly have to delete on August 8th of 2023? Charles Jones was shot on October 7th of 2023, and her boyfriend and the boyfriend's best friends are now ballistically connected to that attempted murder of Charles Jones. We know exactly what she's deleting. She's got his back. She had his back on October 8th of 2023. She had his back in that interrogation room with law enforcement where they are pressing her. And make no mistake, she knew why they were talking to her. She knew why they were questioning her. It's clear in her messaging to the person that they're making fun of law enforcement for having the wrong phone. She knows law enforcement officers are looking for her. You saw that text exchange. You saw her say, are they still there? It's very clear they're talking about police. And she's like, they still have my phone. It's just for a resisting arrest charge. Oh, too bad. They have the new phone. I don't have they didn't get the old phone, laughing my effing ASS off, right? That's consciousness of guilt evidence. There isn't any reason she needs to be laughing at law enforcement for having the phone, for having her new phone, and not having her old phone, unless the old phone has what? The old phone has evidence on it, and you heard from law enforcement, there's an Apple iCloud that she didn't count on, that they were able to get up a backup of. They're able to get a backup of her phone of every single thing, messages, thousands of messages, but the one message area that they can't get is the day of the homicide. They are able to get it off Sean Gathwright's phone. That's why we know that her phone and Sean Gathwright's phone are communicating desperately when the tracking of the victim is occurring. You have video evidence of Charles Jones being stalked at teasers for silver Chevy Cruze. You have video evidence of after the silver Chevy Cruze, the black Chevy Impala appears. Same exact thing happens at Truth 18. The two places where the victim advertised that he would be on Instagram, and she follows him on Instagram. And again, the same coordination, the surveillance tracking vehicle, the silver Chevy Cruze, with again, the defendant and Isaiah Chance, her boyfriend, in that car. You know that there are communications that are not accounted for in those call detail records, that there is some other application that they are using for those calls. You heard from Detective Ramos. When that phone is up to Isaiah Chance's ear and he's walking on that phone, there isn't an attempted phone call. There isn't a missed phone call. There is no record of it. Those calls from that time period and those messaging are happening when he is in the car with her.
All right, we're going to take a break here, folks, but when we get back, we're going to take you back to closing. So keep it here on your front row seat to justice.
I ended up asking him if he loved me. He said, I don't know. I said, do you love her? He said, I don't know.
That set you off?
Someone was stabbed?
Yes, she's on the floor.
I didn't have the intent to kill Sarah. I really just wanted to scare them.
It looks more like fury than fear. Did you kill Sarah to possess what she had with Josh?
Interview with a Killer. New episode Saturday night at 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
All right, before we head back to court, folks, let's bring back in former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani to discuss. And Nima, I want to talk quickly about the conspiracy charge, because we know that it requires a meeting of the minds. So she would have had to have this meeting of the minds with her co-defendants, and also an overt act. I think it's clear the overt act they're claiming is that she was in the car as part of this surveillance team and maybe even feeding information back to the actual shooters. Number one, is that enough? And number two, there is a suggestion that you use your common sense to the jurors that there was this meeting of the minds, but there's no concrete evidence of it. Do you think those two elements have been met by prosecutors?
Michael, I agree with you. I think the overt act is certainly a lot easier. It's not anything like pulling the trigger. Certainly surveilling someone is more than enough to be an overt act, but it's really that intent, that unlawful agreement, that meeting of the minds that you're talking about. That's the more challenging element here. Obviously, the defense is arguing that she didn't know what was going on, but the prosecution is making some good points. They're really focused on the length of time that Andrews was with those co-conspirators, right? How could she not have heard? And I really like how they're leaning into that phone evidence, right? People that don't know what's going on, they don't delete phone evidence, call logs, text messages, right? I mean, everyone has been in a relationship and they have their significant other and they hide their phone. Well, you use your common sense. You know something's going on. You have something to hide. So I like what the prosecution is doing here. They're really focused on that evidence that they have because it's hard to get into someone's mind. Most criminals aren't stupid enough to say, hey, we're going to go to Tampa to kill Julio Foolio, right? It's just not going to happen. So by appealing to the jurors' common sense, you say, hey, here's someone that was there for days and hours. I mean, she knew exactly what was going on. And then why would she delete all this evidence after the fact and lie to law enforcement? That's consciousness of guilt. She knew exactly what she was getting herself into.
Yeah, why would she be laughing at the police that they had the new phone rather than the old phone? That's the one that really hit me. But speaking of common sense, that's what prosecutors keep saying. They're saying, this took place. You know it did. Use your common sense. Well, how does common sense line up with beyond a reasonable doubt?
It's hard. So if you look at the jury instruction for beyond a reasonable doubt, and essentially the same in every state and under federal law, it's not beyond any doubt, right? Anything is possible, right? The analogy we always give is, the world can end, an asteroid could hit the courtroom and we could all die, but that's not reasonable, right? So when you're the prosecution, you want to say it's not beyond any doubt, right? It's what is a reasonable explanation, because the jury instruction says that you can reject unreasonable explanations. Obviously, if there's two reasonable theories of the case or explanations of the evidence, the jurors are supposed to side with the defense. But if one version is reasonable, that being the prosecution, and the defense's version is unreasonable, under those jury instructions, the jurors are to reject the unreasonable explanation. That's why you have prosecutors really focused on use your common sense, be reasonable, because what they really want to do is portray that defense theory of the case as entirely unreasonable. So under those jury instructions, the jurors are supposed to reject it.
Yeah, and in this instance, it's not just the defense's story that's unreasonable. It's actually Alicia Andrews' story is unreasonable. They're going to have to take a look at. All right, Nima, stand by. I want to take folks back inside the courtroom now for more closing arguments in the Murder of Julio Foolio trial.
Definitely another application that, again, shows sophistication. They do not want to be caught. They do not want to be tracked. They are very careful with what they are doing with their devices. You heard from their own expert that Davion Murphy and Isaiah Chance, they're not using their phones during the time of the homicide. And again, the same stalking that happens. The victim and his entourage get there, they go inside the club, and again, we have the blue being designated by the silver Chevy Cruze and the defendant and her boyfriend. And this is not a romantic getaway. To suggest is beyond common sense, beyond all reason. They are just walking around the parking lot. They don't make any attempt to go to the door. And the reason why the coordination of the video shows it is because the victim's party has just gone up those stairs and that they are on that second landing getting ready to enter in the club. They don't even go up to the sidewalk. They stay well in that parking lot and they end up walking to the sign. Is a sign a tourist attraction, something of interest that they would need to go to? They are purposely avoiding that door because Isaiah Chance knows Julio Foolio. And there is no reaction by the defendant. There is no surprise. There's no reaction like, why in the world are we walking to the sign and the roadway and not going to the club if they truly are going clubbing? It is because it is a lie. She knows exactly what is going on. You know exactly the type of conversations that are happening inside that black Chevy Impala. The homicide scene. You have seen video of this many times now. I'm not going to show it again. But again, there is that coordination. You saw the USF poll cam. It is their car, the defendant, and Isaiah Chance in that silver Chevy Cruze that is following behind the victim and the two other vehicles with the victim. They don't pull into the home to suites because they're not the gunmen. They don't have any of the shooters in their car. They have to wait. You know that there is, again, communication that has to be happening between those two vehicles. It is no coincidence that at two locations where the victim is, the silver Chevy Cruze appears, and then shortly thereafter, the black Impala appears. And then at the third location, that is not ever advertised, never advertised anywhere. They just go to those hotels to get a room. The only way, the only possible way that Sean Gathright and that black Chevy Impala could possibly know where the victims are, because you know he's tracking them. You saw from his phone, he's trying to get this Kayla Enright or his sister to be able to call somebody who's with Six to find where he is earlier in the night when he's at the Airbnb. They're trying to get an address. There's only two locations they know where Charles Jones is going to be, and that is at Teasers and Truth 18. The only way the shooter, Sean Gathright, and the other two shooters in that black Chevy Impala could possibly know where the victim is because the silver Chevy Cruze, who has been following that car all along from Truth 18 to the home to suites, called them and told them. And as soon as the black Chevy Impala makes that U-turn and goes into that McKinley entrance, the silver Chevy Cruze with the defendant and the victim go right into the entrance and do what they have been doing all night, and that is act as surveillance. They are eyes on the victim. Where is he? And the reason why the gunmen know exactly where the victim is because that silver Chevy Cruze drives right in front of it and know where the victim is at the time of the shooting. Principles: if the defendant helped another person or persons commit or attempt to commit a crime, the defendant is a principal and must be treated as if she had done all the things the other person or persons did if the state.
All right, thanks to Nima Rahmani for joining us tonight. Folks, stick around. Coming up in our next hour, we'll get you back to court for more closing arguments in the murder of Julio Foolio trial in Florida. We're going to pick up with the defense attorney, so you don't want to miss it. Keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.